Don't do it.
Right there, right?
We're live.
Okay.
Okay. Since we are live, yeah. Here we go, y'all.
Okay.
Welcome to the Permaculture Pimpcast with your host, the Permaculture Pimp Daddy and the Pasture Raised Pimp. Get your recommended daily allowance of permaculture, preparedness, and practical living. Tip a pimp. Stay alert, stay alive. Permaculture is my passion. Oh yeah, welcome to the bonus episode of the Permaculture Pimpcast, and today is a very special episode. We'll get into that in a minute because we almost never broadcast on Sunday. All right, so before we get into it, y'all, as always, this episode brought to you by Hickory Ridge Soap from TwoOldCrowsHomestead.com.
Turn that simp into a pimp.
Bam! Okay. As you can see, she ain't the best color commentator in the world for nothing, y'all. Don't have my usual sidekick, but she is on here for a reason, and she insisted on being here because of our guests coming up, and I'm really excited about that. Always, y'all, remember, you need any preparedness supplies, go check out Heaven's Harvest. Knock 10% off with promo code PERMA, P-E-R-M-A. Don't need to tell everybody about the times we live in, but it's better to stay alert, stay alive. All right, y'all. Also, if you would like to check us out on another platform, it's called the Fountain app. Fountain app. A-P-P. And if you want to drop some SATs on some PIMPs, just go check it out over there on the Fountain app. Remember, PIMP stands for Permaculture is my passion. For all the folks in the chat right now that are thinking, oh my gosh, what did I tune into? Well, remember, it's an acronym. It stands for Permaculture is my passion. And there's a whole lot of different avenues of permaculture that we get into this. I'm going to handle all the housekeeping up front because I don't want to interrupt our guest at all. Remember, if you need anything in terms of an EMP shield, check out EMP Shield. Remember, promo code PERMA, P-E-R-M-A, will knock $50 off of that. And remember, Harvest Right freeze dryers. Don't forget them out there if you need anything to preserve, which is what I'm actually running right now. I made some ballin' sheep breakfast sausage out there, and it's in the freeze dryer as we speak. So, folks, I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am to bring on my next guest. Let me give you a little background of how I discovered her. I was having dinner last week with Tag from Life Done Free, along with Bobby and also Patrick. And Tag, who doesn't just throw out compliments anywhere, he and Bobby would not quit. In fact, Patrick also would not stop about the lady I'm going to bring on right now. And I mean, good night. I've never heard Tag go on about somebody so much. So I'm like, okay, dude, I got the point. He sent me a link immediately. And on the 6-hour drive home, I'm listening to as I'm driving, I'm listening to everything she's putting out there. And I'm like, I didn't even get home yet. And I'm as soon as I pulled over to get gas, I said, Tag, you got to tell me how to get a hold of her. I didn't even wait for the response. And then I looked at his video and saw how to get a hold of her. So I emailed her. And folks, look, I've done a lot of interviews. A lot of them I told you were very important. But this one, in my judgment, and probably in Michelle's as well, is probably going to be one of the most important I've ever done. And without further ado, y'all, I want to bring on my guest, Callie. How you doing, Callie Blackwell?
Hi, man. I got a lot to live up to.
Yeah, you do.
Wonderful.
I know you can, though, because I've heard your story. And folks, you got to not only listen to this, but tell everybody you know about what she's doing and what she's done. But every good as I always say in the interviews, every superhero, and believe me, y'all, she is a real life superhero, has an origin story. So, Callie, I'm just going to hand it over to you because I know you're going to knock the socks off of everybody listening right now, especially not only with what you've done, but what you currently do. And folks, we're going to get into all that. If you got any questions, make sure you stick around because she's on here. We got a live chat. Michelle's got a long list of questions. And folks, it's so big a deal that I got the Homestead Honey on with me. That is an enormous deal because she has been binging everything she can get her hands on, from your ebook to the other interviews you've done, and we're going to get into all that. So, Callie, why don't you just take it away?
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I guess it's best just to start at the beginning, right? And kind of how I found myself here in this position. I'm an accidental activist. I never would have thought that I would have been here, you know, looking back 15 years ago. So back in 2010 is when my kind of story started. And back in 2010, my then 10-and-a-half-year-old son, Darren, was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which is cancer of the blood, for those that don't know. And then he went on to active chemotherapy because you don't have a choice in the UK. As soon as your child is diagnosed, they take them in, they do whatever they need to do. And if you argue with that, they will make them a ward of the court and they will take them into care and they will do the treatment anyway. So I went along with the treatment. I didn't know anything different back then either. I kind of got on this roller coaster ride that I never bought a ticket for and I couldn't get off. And it was a case of we just had to ride it. And so whilst on active chemotherapy, he was doing really well. He spent a lot of time in hospital, but he was reacting fairly well. And when he was 12 years old, he was then diagnosed with another cancer called Langerhans cell sarcoma. Now, this cancer, Langerhans cell sarcoma, there's only been 50 cases since records began, and they had no protocol for him. They didn't know what to do with him. And it turned out, after much research on my part and getting the nod from the doctors, it turned out that he was the only person in the entire world to have these two cancers together. So they had no idea what to do with him. They had no protocol. They had nothing. They were sliced. It was ended up, the second cancer actually appeared in his tonsils. And so he had a tonsillectomy. That's how they found out. And slices of his tonsils went all over the world. He was patient X in a number of meetings everywhere: Australia, America, Canada, Brazil. He went everywhere. And they determined, after looking down on a cellular level, that this was a relapse as opposed to a secondary cancer. This had also originated in the bone marrow. So they decided that a bone marrow transplant was the way to go with him. And so it was around about just after his 13th birthday, he had another 6 months of intensive chemotherapy, like adult doses of everything. Their words were, we don't know what to do with him, so we're going to give him everything we can without killing him. So, and they did give him everything they could. And they did almost very nearly kill him on a number of occasions. It was pretty close a number of times. And so on March the 1st, 2013, we were moved from one side of the country to the other. It was only a 5-hour drive. England's not very big, but we went from one side to the other. And we embarked on what they told me would be, at worst, a 7-week episode, that we would be in this hospital for, at worst, 7 weeks. And it wasn't 7 weeks. We were there for a lot longer. But he had his first bone marrow transplant on March the 1st, 2013. And the first one subsequently failed. And the second one subsequently failed. And so he had 2 transplants from a donor that was from Germany. And they decided that actually there was no point giving him a transplant from another donor. This wasn't working. He was having awful side effects called GVHD, which is graft versus host disease, which is basically, if you were to have a liver transplant, your immune system would see that liver as a foreign object. And so it would try to reject the liver. When you have a bone marrow transplant, your entire immune system is somebody else's. So your entire body is foreign. So it attacks everything from your skin to your inside, from your mouth all the way through. Like, he had ulcers everywhere. It was just absolutely horrendous. And it was actually after his second bone marrow transplant that I started looking at nature, and I started looking at plants, other plants, and lemon balm and chamomile, just to ease his ulcerations in his mouth and his throat. And they also, the reason why his first 2 transplants had failed was because he had a virus called adenovirus. Now, that's just a very simple virus to you or I, but when you have no immune system and you are in an isolation, I mean, he spent 2 years in isolation away from everybody. And when you're in that circumstance and you don't have anything to fight back, it's dire. And so them trying to treat his adenovirus was absolutely destroying his new bone marrow. If they'd just let his new bone marrow, probably, but they said to me at the time, they said, listen, we're not going to give him any more treatment for the adenovirus. We're going to give him his own cells back, cells that they'd harvested before all of the radiotherapy and chemotherapy to destroy everything. They'd actually harvest what they call a rescue dose or rescue cells. which they then kept on ice. So they said, listen, we're going to give him his own cells back, but obviously they're the cells that contain the 2 cancers. So, you know, and we're not going to treat the adenovirus. Now, the bone marrow transplant should kick in within 21 to 25 days. However, we're not going to treat the adenovirus anymore. So one of them is going to win. We just don't know which one. We suggest you pray. And that's when I went, no, I prayed too, but I was like, I'm going to go on the internet. I'm going to start looking at natural alternatives, because previous to that, they had told me, don't go on the internet. We will tell you everything you need to know. You will only scare yourself if you go on there. So I ignored all of that. And I went on there and I just searched for natural alternatives to adenovirus. And I found lemon balm, echinacea, olive leaf extract, lipospheric vitamin C, you name it. I went out, Manuka honey, and off I went. And I spent about $300 getting all this stuff, came back and I started giving it to him in a really high dose. And I'd managed within a week to get his adenovirus down from a count of 3.2 million to just over 1,000 within a week. And the bone marrow transplant was still nowhere to be seen. And the doctors were like scratching their heads and they couldn't believe it. And I actually wrote a book, and I think because there's a lot more details in this that I don't want to go too far into, because I'll be here for literally the next 5 hours. But there was a whole thing that happened then at that point where the doctors literally laughed at me for giving him these things when they were working, because for some reason, it's not all doctors, I don't have it against all doctors, but for some reason, doctors would rather that your child die so long as they were right. You know, there's some kind of egoic thing going on. I don't know what it is. And so thankfully, eventually, that bone marrow, that 3rd bone marrow transplant did kick in. The adenovirus was gone. It was no longer there. And it kicked in at around day 25. And it was wonderful. We thought, yes, this is it. This is our way out. Yes, Darren has his own cells back. Yes, there's a very high chance that those cancers are going to come back, because they were very aggressive. But that was, at least he was alive. At least he was now going to live. And unfortunately, we had a chimerism test done, which chimerism test, and if anybody knows chimerism cats, like when they've got half the different colors, a chimerism is to see what's going on and to see how many cells are yours and how many cells are the donors. Now, there shouldn't have been any donor cells in there, because the donation had already failed in their eyes. And so they did this chimerism test, and his T cells were his, and all of the other blood cells were the donors. And we don't know how that happened. And so at one point, Darren actually had 2 sets of DNA, 2 blood types. It was crazy. They were saying to me, and I'd heard this, I don't know how many times until this point, we've never seen this before. We've never seen this before. And they're scratching their heads and they don't know what to do. And they actually took me in and said, what do you think is going to happen? Like, look at all of his notes, look at his numbers. What do you think is going to happen? And I said, well, I think the 2 immune systems are going to battle it out to the death, and this is going to fail. And they said, we think so too. And that's exactly what happened. So his 3rd bone marrow transplant failed on the 29th of August, 2013. And they said, listen, we've got 1 more bag. Thank God, somebody had the good sense to split that donation, his donation, into 2. So we had 1 more chance. And they said, listen, if this one doesn't work, that's it. We have nothing else for him. There is no other way. You cannot live without a functioning bone marrow. You can't live without a functioning immune system. Your bone marrow is where your blood is made. If you're not making blood, that's it. You can't live like that. Obviously you can on blood transfusions, but that can only last so long. And so they said, listen, I want Darren to have more chemotherapy. We're going to give him more chemotherapy. We're going to make sure there's absolutely nothing in his bone marrow whatsoever. There's no little hiding cells there. We're going to give him chemotherapy, and we're going to go in with the last bone marrow transplant. And we just got to hope and pray that this one works. And funnily enough, Darren actually turned around to me at that point and said, no, I don't want it. Let me go. Leave me to die. I've had enough. He was 13 at this point, had treatment for, 3 years. He's like, I've had enough. Just let me die. And I reverted back to a conversation that Darren and I had just before his 2nd transplant had failed. And it was just after his 2nd transplant had failed. And I said to him, he was sat in the bath and I was sat on the edge of the toilet. And I said, dude, like, how are you not pissed at the world? Like, he was diagnosed with autism, Tourette syndrome, and ADHD when he was 8 years old. Then again, 10 years old cancer, 12 years old cancer. I was like, how are you not just like angry because me, I don't know, personally, I'd feel a bit like the world was against me. You know, it's very hard not to take that personally. And he looked at me and he said, well, you know, because I chose this. And I said, okay, embellish on this, please. And he said, well, Mum, he said, throughout our many lives, our souls have to experience all there is to experience. And only when our souls are strong enough, they take on their biggest challenge. This is my biggest challenge. I'm not coming back. I have goosebumps even now when I say that, because as a 13-year-old child, you know, people have said to me, well, where did he get that from? And I said, well, you know, he spent a long time in isolation on his own thinking. He faced his death from a very young age. And I think that in itself brings you closer to a deeper knowing. And I've always said that Darren brought me to God and the way that he was. And he said to me, he said, Mum, I chose you because you needed to learn a lot of lessons. And he said, you know, we all chose each other. This is a journey. And I said, okay. So months later, when he said, you know, I don't want to have chemo, just let me die, I used his words against him, which he wasn't best pleased about. But I said, you know, dude, I said, I also feel that you chose me because I won't let you give up. I'm not going to give up on you. I'm not going to let you give up. I'm really tenacious. And I said, you know, do you really want to give up now when there's still another chance? Like, if there's no other chances, I'll absolutely back you. Like, I'm with you 100%, but we still have a chance. We have to take this. Otherwise we'll never know. And I said, you know, what do you think you're going to do if you give up now? And he said, well, I'll probably have to come back. He says, I don't want to do that. Okay, I'll have chemo. So he went through a little bit more chemotherapy, eradicated everything there in his bone marrow. And in the October, he had his fourth and final transplant. Now, 3 days later, he trapped his fingers down the side of his hospital bed and he picked up 3 catastrophic infections. He already had one in his mouth called Klebsiella, which is like MRSA on steroids. It ate like a third of his tongue. He'd already lost a third of his soft palate because of the operation with his second cancer. Like, they'd already taken out tonsils, appendix. Like, he was already cut, burnt and poisoned beyond recognition at this point. And he had 2 catastrophic infections in his hand. One was herpes whitlow and the other was cellulitis. And there's lots of pictures online. Anybody that wants to see them can go and see the state that his fingers got into. And unfortunately, what happened was these infections were absolutely ravaging this new bone marrow that was hopefully trying to come in. It had no chance. It had absolutely no chance because anything that was coming in was just getting wiped out by this infection. And so we spoke about, he had granulocytes, which are the white blood cells taken from someone else. He had them implanted. That didn't work. Nothing was working. And they said, listen, he said, they said at day 50, if nobody has engrafted with their bone marrow transplant by day 50, it's not going to happen. Bearing in mind, it's meant to happen between 21 and 25 days. Day 50, if it's not happened, it's not going to happen. And so on day 47, which was 10 days after his 14th birthday, on the 11th of December, we were moved to a hospice. In fact, I made the choice to take him out of the hospital care and move him to a children's hospice. And they told me then that the only thing that was keeping him alive was his blood transfusions and the plethora of antibiotics they had up trying to keep him alive. And so I said to them, you know, I'd always called it like his conscious life support machine. And I said, well, how long are we talking? Once I take him off the antibiotics, how long are we talking? How long am I going to get in the hospice with him? And they said 3 days a week at most, if you're lucky. When do you want to go? So, well, I don't, but I do, but I don't. Because my thought at that point as well was, you know, we wouldn't do it to a dog. We take our dogs, or we put our dogs out of misery, and yet we hold on to people who are suffering so badly when, you know, and I just thought I'd rather he had 3 days of fun of living like a teenage boy than another 6 months like this in a hospital room living in a bubble. Like, it's no life. And so I walked back into that room, and my son, being the very pragmatic young man that he was I said to him, well, I walked in and they said, okay, how long have I got? Just like, how long have I got? And I said 3 days a week at most. And he said, okay, let's go. Let's get over and done with. Let's go. When are we going? So we got everything together. We packed up his hospital room. I mean, he'd been in that hospital for 10 months now by this point. They all knew him. They loved him. He was a resident. And off we went to the children's hospice. Now, when his hand had first started being infected, they brought hand specialists in, and they wanted to amputate his hand here. And they wanted to amputate his hand across here. And he said, listen, if you're going to take my hand, you take the whole thing. He said, you're not leaving me like a lobster, like take the whole thing if you want it. And he said, and I said, well, hang on a second. Like I said, the kid's dying. I said, can we not just cut the nerves so he just can't feel it? I said, I don't want him any more maimed. I want him to die like as whole as we possibly can. Can we just sever the nerves? And the hand specialist said, well, that's rather permanent. So I said, well, yeah, it's like an amputation is not permanent. I was like, I don't know where these people came from. And I said, listen, just sever the nerves. Now, before that, I had asked for Bedrocan, which is a cannabis-based pain relief, because he was already on the most amount of fentanyl that he could have. He was already on the most amount of morphine that he could have. And nothing was working for this pain in his hand. His hand was effectively dying. And so I said, listen, I've done a little bit of research, again, natural alternatives for pain. And this drug called Bedrocan that was licensed for children. Well, it wasn't licensed. It was licensed for children in Europe, but it's not licensed for children in the UK. I said, look, I'll drive over to Amsterdam. I'll go get it. I don't care. Like, it's only a 6-hour drive. I'll go over. I'll get it. You just need to write a prescription. And she said, we can't. It's not licensed for children. We're not allowed to do that. So I thought, okay, there was another thing that I tried and they just dismissed it. So at that point, I was training at a gym. I used to be a bodybuilder, and I was training at this gym, and this guy who I'd met had actually said to me, have you thought about cannabis? And I said, well, I mean, no, not really, kind of. But I said, he doesn't have cancer anymore. This is not that. This is failed bone marrow transplants. And, obviously the cancer cells are lurking, but that's not the issue right now. And I said, and I don't even know where to get it from. And he's like, well, I can help you. I said, okay, then. So I went and got some weed off him, and we made a tincture. And I made this tincture to go into a vape pen so that he could sit in the hospital and vape this stuff and hopefully deal with the pain. And it wasn't enough. It didn't do anything. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a clue. And so and that's not the best way to get it into us either. And so I kind of put that down as at least I tried, and we kind of left it. We didn't bother with it any further, but I kept the tincture and I had it with me. And in the children's hospice, it was the 3 days had gone past, and he wasn't dying, but his organs were slowly shutting down. He was starting to, and I don't want to be too descriptive. I mean, anybody that's seen anybody in palliative care understands that there's certain bodily functions that happen when the organs start shutting down. And this was happening. And so they were telling me to be prepared. It was coming. I signed a DNR, he had to do not resuscitate over his head. And he just kind of held on. And they put it down to like a Lazarus moment. A lot of people have these in hospices. Once they get out of the hospital care and they get somewhere nice, like it gives them this boost of life. But his body, the cells and everything were not reacting the same way that he wanted to. And so it actually got to day 70. We had Christmas, we had New Year, and it got to day 70 after this bone marrow transplant, and there was still nothing there. Now, I said to the nurses, I said, listen, I need another blood test. I need you to tell me that there's absolutely nothing in there, because he's still here, and you told me he'd be dead within 3 days, and it's been 2 weeks. Like, I need to know that I made the right decision. I need to know that I don't need to get him straight back into hospital. I need to know that this really is the demise. And so they did a bone marrow aspirate, which is actually way deeper than a bone marrow test. It's where they take a very fat needle and they go into the ball joint of the hip, because that's where they can get out most of the bone marrow and they can really have a good look at it. They came back to me that evening on day 70 and they said, there's nothing in there. I'm so sorry. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not. I'm not. And Darren wasn't sad either, because his words were, he said, Mum, if there's anything in there, they're going to drag me back in hospital, and it's back to the prodding and the poking and the everything. And I don't want it. So it's good. I'm glad there's nothing in there. And the nurse said, we just have to wait. Something will get him. And so Darren at that point was like, he was really anxious because he wanted to die too. And he was very anxious as to why has this not happened yet? And so he started having night terrors. He started, he just started having night terrors, and it wasn't pleasant. And I started sleeping in the bed with him, and I'd hold his hand every night. And every morning I'd wake up thinking that I was going to have a cold hand in my hand. And every morning he didn't. And it just kind of, for me, even the anxiety was just like, come on now. This is like pulling teeth. And so their answer to his night terrors was morphine. They upped the morphine, and they just kept upping the morphine. And so my son was a zombie. He was in a coma. It wasn't, And he'd also been very specific. They do a death plan, the same as you do a birth plan when you have a baby. They do a death plan. How do you want to die? What do you want? And he sat down with his nurses and he did all of this. I mean, I planned his funeral with him. He wanted to be a huge part of this. And he said to his nurses, listen, I don't want to die on morphine. He said, I've had enough morphine in the last 3.5 years. Like, I don't want to die on morphine. He said, and then he looked at me and said, Mum, they've taken everything else from me. They're not having my death. I want to experience the transition. Don't let them numb me. So as his last dying wish, all I could do was beg them to take away the morphine. But then, of course, the anxiety came in, and it was a catch-22. And so I looked at I had the jar of tincture, like I'd hidden it under the bed so that nobody could see it. And I just remember looking down and I thought, what if I just whack a load of that in his mouth? Like, because cannabis chills you out, right? And this is all I wanted. I just wanted to chill him out. I wanted to give him the death that he wanted and the one that we all deserved. And so I just thought, well, you know what have I got to lose? He's dying anyway. Like, it's not going to kill him, is it? So I drew up a syringe of like 5 ml of this. It was like a honey texture. And I asked him, and he said, yeah, I'm up for it, you know. So I squirted it in his mouth under his tongue. And I watched within seconds that his whole demeanor just changed. Like, he relaxed back in his bed. I watched his shoulders drop. I watched his breathing deepen, and I watched the relief on his face. And he just went, I'm good. Like, I'm good. And he wasn't high. He wasn't stoned. He was just relaxed. He was just like, I'm good. And then a nurse came to the door with a drug called cyclizine. Now, cyclizine is an antiemetic, so it's an anti-sickness drug. But cyclizine is one that has to be done over either a 5-minute push or in a syringe driver. So a nurse is supposed to stand there and push it in over 5 minutes, or we have it in a machine. Well, he'd been on this for about 9 months, and back in the hospital, they either didn't have syringe drivers or the nurses just didn't have time. They got to a point where they were hooking it up to the line in his chest and handing him the syringe, and he was banging it into himself. That immediately can cause heart attack. I didn't know that until many months later, but it gave him the feeling. It was almost like heroin. And he would say to me, it was like a warm blanket that he felt very safe inside of. And so he got very, very addicted to this drug. I mean, heroin addicted to this drug, in that he would be on his buzzer. Where's my cyclizine? They're like, you can't have it for another 2 hours. And he's like, and he'd be screaming and shouting at them because he was clucking, like real bad clucking. So when the nurse turns up at the door with the cyclizine, bang on time, because God forbid if he got there late, she stood there with this tray. And I thought, oh, shit, what if what I've just given him and what she's going to give him contraindicates? And like, I'm now responsible for him to just die in front of me. And he turned to her and he said, oh, you can take that. I don't want it. And so I looked at him, I looked at her, she looked at me, she kind of, what? And I said, take it away before he changes his mind, like, take it away. So off she toddled with it, like, and he just looked at me and I said, are you sure? Like, dude, you've been like proper crackhead addicted to that for 9 months. Are you sure? And he said, yeah, I don't feel like I need it. I don't want it. Don't feel like I need it. And so for me already, this was a miracle. For me already, it got him off the morphine, off the cyclizine, off the sleeping tablets that they were putting into him. It got him, it was going to give him the death that he wanted. And I was so pleased about that. And I was so happy about that. And so he never had morphine again, never had cyclizine again, never had a sleeping tablet again after that. And so for the next 5 days, this was at day 70. So for the next 5 days, I just kept giving him this tincture 4 or 5 times a day, just putting it in, you know, and he was happy. He was very jovial. And then on day 75, we were watching a film in the living room. And now bear in mind that his hand was horrendous. And he's like Mickey Mouse bandages, big fat bandages. They said, do not take these bandages off, because underneath we've debrided pretty much down to the bone. There's no blood flow. It's pretty disgusting under there. Anything needs to be changed under a surgical setting. Don't, you know, guard those bandages with your life. And so he was Mickey Mouse. And so he had his bandages in his hand and his hands in between his legs, and he fell asleep. And then he woke up and he pulled his hand out and he looked at me and he goes, Mom, look at my finger. And I was like, what? What do you mean, look at your finger? And the middle bandage had come off and his finger looked like mine, but it had no fingernail on it. And I immediately was like, hang on a minute. The last time I saw his fingers, like they didn't look like this. And I know, and I said, hang on a minute, you can't, I know that you can't even repair skin cells without a functioning immune system. I know that for a fact. And so I called in the nurse and I said, look, one of his bandages has come off. And they were like, oh my God, we need to do a blood test. And I said, look, 5 days ago, there was nothing in his bone marrow. If it's not in his bone marrow, it's not in his blood. Like, that's for sure. And they said, we need to do a blood test. Now, the bone marrow aspirate that they give me, anybody that does know any kind of medical terminology, your neutrophils are the ones that they look at. That's one of the white blood cells. It's one of that they look at to see whether or not you are prone to infection. And so anything above 1, you're not as prone to infection, but anything below 1, you're in trouble. Now, his neutrophil count back 5 days previously was 0.005, which is nothing. And now his blood test showed that his neutrophils were 0.25. So they have increased however many percentage that is. And they looked at me and they said, oh my God, he's not dying anymore. We think there's something going on. We need to have a look at this. You know, we need to get him back into hospital and yada, yada, yada. And Darren was absolutely mortified. And the doctor said to him, Darren, you're not dying anymore. Isn't this wonderful? He said, what do you know, if you get a temperature, what do you want us to do? Because obviously beforehand, getting a temperature meant antibiotics and there'd be this protocol. But of course, he's on a DNR, so there's none of that now. And excuse my language, but Darren said, you can just leave me the fuck alone. And the doctor said, well, that's rather flippant. I said, like 30 seconds ago, the kid was dying. He's planned his funeral. And now you're telling them he's not. But then in the same breath, they're saying, well, and they said this in front of him. They said, well, you know, he could drop down dead in the next week. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. I was like, oh, what are you doing to him? And so lo and behold, yeah, we ended up getting evicted from the hospice and he officially engrafted with his own. He started to make his own red blood cells on day 104. And his immune system just kept getting better and better and better. And I actually knew that I had a very small window of opportunity to see whether or not this was the cannabis or whether this was something else. So I took it away and I watched his blood count half and I gave it back and it doubled. I took it away and it halved. And I did that over a 6 blood test period so that I could look and I saw the correlation. And I was like, absolutely, this is cannabis that's done this to his immune system. This is incredible. And so I kept giving it to him and he just kept getting better. We got evicted from the children's hospice after 8 weeks and they didn't really still know what to do with him. And obviously I couldn't tell anybody. There was one nurse that knew about the magic under the bed. And I was so terrified that if they found out that they would take him into care and then that was it. He would lose the one thing after all of these years that had helped him. They would take that away from him and they would put him in care and that would be a death sentence for him. And I knew that. So I had to keep absolutely my mouth shut. Now, sadly, that's not where it ends with him, is that his mental health absolutely went into the floor. It was just too much for him. It was way too much for him to get his head around and everybody around him was so pleased and happy and couldn't understand why he wasn't pleased and happy. So he felt very guilty about that. And he said, Mum, he said, it was like I was stood in the threshold of a door and everything that I ever wanted was on the other side of that door. My PlayStation, my BMX, the woods that I grew up in, like my friends, like no more pain, no more suffering. When I was 10 years old, I saw everything. And he said, someone slammed the door in my face and told me to turn around and walk back through hell. And I don't have it in me. I just don't have it in me. And so the road to recovery to him just seemed completely insurmountable. And sadly, the tincture that I was giving him wasn't doing anything for his mental health. It probably wasn't the right strain. It wasn't strong, whatever it wasn't. And so when that ran out, I didn't bother making any more. His immune system, his cells were doing really, really well. Physically, he was really recovering, but mentally, he was a long way behind. And he actually then tried to starve himself to death for approximately 6 months. He refused to eat anything. He got down to 24 kilos, which is nothing. It's like 40 pounds or something. It was ridiculous. I've never seen anything like it except for on like videos of Auschwitz and stuff like that. It was awful. And to watch him, and I think that was for me the hardest 6 months of the whole journey, was because cancer's one thing, like, you know, but him wanting to be like, Mum, just let me die. Like, you have to let me die. I don't want to be here anymore. And I was begging him. I'd be on my hands and knees with like just a cracker, like, please just eat something. And he was like, no, I don't want to, let me go. I had him on suicide watch. I took his belts off him. I took his shoelaces off him. Like, I wouldn't get him out of my sight. And eventually, because now I started looking at other people who I went online and I started looking at, were there communities of other people who had been helped with cannabis? Could anybody help me? Like, I wanted to see if there was anybody out there, and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people out there who all had, nobody had a story quite like my son's, but everybody, like fibromyalgia, MS, like cancer, like pain, and I was like, oh my God, there's a whole world of people out here. And through those means, I ended up being put in touch with a guy called Jeff Ditchfield, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. And he was in Spain. And we'd also been offered a holiday in Spain. And so I said to the doctors, I was like, look, listen, they wanted to, their answer to his mental health was, listen, if he doesn't start eating soon, we're going to section him, we're going to sedate him, and we're going to force feed him. We're going to treat him like an anorexic because he's going to die soon. He's going to have a heart attack if he doesn't get food in him, you know. And I said, listen, you're using a sledgehammer to crack a walnut here. I said, can you please get him some psychological help? Can he see like maybe a psychotherapist? And their words were, he doesn't qualify for that. So no, he can't. I said, what on earth have you got to do to qualify for that kind of help in the UK? Like, this is insane. So no, he didn't get any psychological help. They just left him. So I said, listen, let me take him to Spain. If we come back from Spain and the thing is still the same, I'll hand him over to you. I don't know what else to do, but just let me take him away. Just give me 2 weeks reprieve. And they did, thankfully. So we took him to Spain. I met with this guy called Jeff, and he gave me a syringe of the thick black. As many people will know about RSO, FECO, full extract cannabis oil. He gave me a syringe of that and said, just put a tiny little bit, like get him to eat just a tiny little bit. It's going to help him. And I was willing. I didn't really know this guy. I was like, I'll give him anything. Like, I don't care. I'll give him anything. I've seen the kid on pethidine and ketamine, and you know, nothing will compare to that. So I said, okay. So the next day, tiny little bit. And about half an hour later, I was making some lunch. I also have another son, Dylan, who's 5 years younger than Darren. And I shouted down, I said, boys, you know, I'm making something for lunch. Does anyone want anything? And I was expecting the usual grunt from Darren. And he shouted up, Mum, make me loads. I'm starving. And so I did. And that kid ate for 12 hours that day. He did not stop eating. He just ate and ate and ate. And the light came back in his eyes, and the life came back. And I watched that kid just transform in those 2 weeks. And we would actually take him down to restaurants on the seafront, and he would order all this huge amount of food. And they're looking at him because he's like 24 kilos and his eyes are all sunken in. His teeth are huge because his face is tiny. And they're like, are you sure he's going to eat all this? I'm like, yeah. And there he was with these bright pink eyes. He's just always smiling from ear to ear, shoveling food in like he was going out of fashion. And so after the 2 weeks, we got back to England, and the oncologist took him and did some things on him, weighed him and all this kind of stuff. She came to me and she said, oh my God, like Darren doesn't want to die anymore. I said, no, I know. And she said, and he's put on 4 kilos, in those 2 weeks. I said, yeah. And she said, that holiday in the world are good. I said, yep. It was the holiday. We'll leave it at that. Again, I ain't saying nothing to nobody. I didn't trust any of them. The fact that they laughed at me and they I wasn't giving this kind of information to them. I said, yeah. And the day after we got back from Spain, there was a 20 ml syringe of cannabis oil on my doorstep that had been donated by the community. And so every single day since June 2014, my son has taken full extract cannabis oil, high THC. I have no qualms about it. And he's still here, and he's 23, and he'll be 24 in about a month. And he's just the most amazing human being I've ever met. And I have promised him that I would go on and help as many people as I could from his journey, because I didn't want his suffering to be for nothing. It had to be for something. And for every single person that just gets even hope from his story, it makes everything worthwhile. It makes it, there's a reason. And just quickly before I end, is his hand that they surgically paralyzed, and they said that he'd never feel his hand ever again. 2 weeks after we get him on that full extract cannabis oil, he starts telling me his hand's hurting. And I said, it can't. You have literally no, they didn't just sever, they cauterized those nerve bundles. And I said, you can't. I said, maybe this is ghost pains, maybe, I don't know. And he said, Mum, I'm telling you, it's like electric shocks going down my fingers. And yeah, I researched and I discovered that it's called neurogenesis, regrowing of neural pathways. And actually within 2 years, he had everything back. The only thing he can't feel is his fingertips, but everything else is back. And it's like he never had it done. And he says, slapped his hand on his oncologist's desk and gone, you explain this to me. And his oncologist literally put his fingers in his ears and said, I toe the party line. I'm not talking about this. They don't want to know. I called him a butcher. I told him he was disgusting, and he didn't deserve to have his job, but they don't, they don't want to hear it. And obviously I did then come out. I wrote a book. There's my little boy's little face. I wrote a book called The Boy in 7 Billion because, he was the only one in the world. And I outlined, I told the whole truth. And really, cannabis is only the tiny bit at the end. The rest of it was the hospital shortfalls, and some of the treat. It's just horrible what happens. But I then decided, listen, I knew, because Darren was the only one in the world. I'd been on media, Darren had been in the newspapers all over the world. And I know how they sensationalize things, and I know how they twist words. I know how they lie blatantly. And so I said, before I come out and tell the world what I did, I need it all down in black and white where no one can twist my words. So I wrote the book, got it published. I went on national TV in the UK. I went on the biggest daytime TV, and I went, yeah, this is what he did. And I really expected the police to be outside waiting for me. And I was ready. I said, okay, this is a hill I'll die on. And so for the last 10 years, I have, because obviously I became a beacon, people found me, they Google, and now I've helped. I don't even count. I don't need to count. I'm not here for it's not clout. I'm not here for that. I just want people to be helped in whatever way they need to be helped. And so for the last 10 years, that's what I've done. I've hooked people up with really good, strong cannabis oil. I've given the advice that I've learned over the last 10 years, different ailments, different ratios, different cannabinoids, there's contraindications with medication and things like this. I want people to be safe. It's very important. This is an amazing medicine, and it's miraculous, but it can only do so much. So diet, nutrition, we've got to make sure we're not feeding the cancer while trying to treat it at the same time. It's a holistic thing. But cannabis is an amazing plant, and we have an endocannabinoid system that relies on cannabinoids in order to be fully functioning. And cannabinoids just happen to be found in abundance in the cannabis plant. And so this plant, I fully believe, was here for us to use as a medicine, not abuse. Of course, it's been abused. Of course, it has. We can abuse food, but it's a beautiful medicine, and I feel very protective towards her because of what she's given me. I could never repay her for what she's given me. And so I don't want people, I don't like it when people have false truths about her, or how she's lied about and things like that, and how she's being manipulated and abused and stuff, because she has a wonderful gift to give. And so I'm very protective of her. So yeah, I think that kind of rounds my story up but I would love people, if you buy my book, there's so much in there. There's so much information in there, and you get to see the whole journey. But that's it in a tiny little nutshell.
Callie, wow. I mean, we can drop the mic at this point. No, I mean, your story is something else, but I'll tell you what really hit me like a ton of bricks. It dropped on me like Thor's hammer. Years ago, when I was actually going through getting my permaculture design certificate, my first one, I was in there with a kid named Cody. And Cody, this is years ago, perhaps about the same time you were having your journey with your son. He was diagnosed with glioblastoma, brain cancer, and probably one of the worst cancers on this planet. And I remember when I had met him, all of this had transpired before then. Now, at the time he was living in Texas, cannabis, all that stuff was illegal. I don't remember how he ended up with it, but I remember the left side of his body was completely paralyzed all the way down. But he had a joy and a peace and a dignity about him that was unparalleled. And like I said, the whole one side of his body didn't work. And I remember, just kind of building a passive friendship with him. And somehow or another, he ended up showing me pictures of this cancer that they pulled out of his brain the size of a baseball. And then I was like, okay, so my 7-year-old nephew died of the same exact cancer years ago. And when this kid told me he cured it, and I'm like, well, how did you cure it? I'm, of course, buying at that time into the mainstream medical model, believing all the lies they typically tell us, very much in the matrix. Cody explained to me that he took high doses of cannabis, and he took it every single day. His whole idea, and this is where it brings us into the permaculture angle of this, his whole reason for even getting into the permaculture design area was how to grow this stuff even better in accordance with nature, to grow it even better, to cure other people out there. And then I remember asking him, Cody, are you at all concerned about being incarcerated? He's like, what more can they do to me? He had such disdain for the medical establishment at that point. He was like, they can throw me away for the rest of my life. And then he was counting them up. He was like, these are how many lives I've already saved so far. So when Tag told me about your story, I'm driving down the road and I'm barely able to keep it on the road because I'm tearing up, because I'm remembering my nephew. I'm remembering what Cody told me. And then hearing about all these other people that have been saved. So when I heard your story, I was like, I didn't even get home. I pulled off the exit. I literally at the time said, Tag, please tell me how to get a hold of her. And then I was like, well, screw that, man. I'm waiting on the gas pump anyway. I emailed you immediately and I said, look, we got to have you on this show. And better still, I mean, folks, if you're out there listening, I know a number of you out there listening and a lot of you are suffering. And by the way, as a little side note, before we continue with Callie's story, I had to put her to the test. So I was like, yeah, so they don't know this yet. And I'm going to tell them right now, anybody watching live on YouTube is going to be able to see this, but I'm going to hold up something. I don't know that I can get it close enough. Yeah, Callie made me up something special. And we had talked about it, how good night. She couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. And Callie, you're going to know how this goes because I got with you yesterday. And the stuff came in the mail. Actually, what was it? Friday morning?
It was Friday.
It was Friday morning. She's had a number of problems. And this is part of why she insisted on being here with you, because there's other things that she wants to address concerning from a lady's perspective. But both of us have been having trouble sleeping, done a lot of grounding. I've done some stuff on Patreon talking about grounding. It had helped. And then all of a sudden, Michelle broke this out of the package. And folks, if you're only hearing for the audio portion of this, is basically Callie's CBD, and she kicked us up with a seriously strong dose of this stuff. We have been using it for years, but from other places you don't know about how good this stuff is. It may have worked in the beginning and now it doesn't work. Well, she's only supposed to take one drop right out of the gates. She took 3. So I'm getting with Callie. I'm like, hang on a minute. Hey, is she just OD on this stuff or what's going to happen? And then Callie, what did you write back?
I said that actually she could drink the whole bottle and she's still not going to get high. There's not a lot of THC in there, but it is a full plant. And I said, well, it's 10 milligrams of CBD per drop. So 3 drops that's a fairly substantial dose. I said, it might just make her quite tired. And your immediate text was like, she just suddenly got real tired. I was like, there it is.
Yeah, she was mellow from the feet up. And then last night is the first time I think I got sleep the night before because I went crazy on this stuff. Well, I took about 6 drops before I went to bed.
No, I took 6 drops. I took 6 Friday night.
Okay,
and
so what were your
Saturday
results, honestly?
I slept better than I've slept in a long time.
I'm so pleased.
Yeah, I went to sleep and I did not wake up until the next morning, which I very rarely do that.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to kick out here, y'all. Look, like I said, I don't ever talk about anything on this show until I actually give it a test run. Every advertiser from EMP Shield to Harvest Right, you name it, they're on here because I reached out to them. It's not because anybody came with their hat in their hand saying, hey, would you peddle this stuff for me? It doesn't work that way. I'm not about to lose my integrity because I was out after the almighty dollar. I don't make a dime after this. But folks, I had to put her to the test because I've been taking, as I told everybody on the show, I've been taking CBD forever and a day. We were getting it from this place out of Kentucky, spending a fortune for it for a fraction of, honestly, 1 drop of yours is the equivalent of an entire dropper of theirs.
And I don't even think that dropper was doing anything.
And it wasn't really doing anything.
Because I had quit taking it because I just stopped seeing any effects from it.
And so we have all these people out there saying, get this, get that. And I'm like, there are so many ways in which I'm like, how you were put in front of my path. And I'm like, okay, not only do we have to have her on the show, we are going to tell everybody out there. And by the way, folks, if you're watching this live right now, hit the thumbs up. Tell everybody out there who we got on here, because we got a real life superhero that is doing some unbelievable stuff. Now, Callie, I want to get back to your story. I wanted you to take a break there while I kind of monologue. The story didn't end there for you. And by the way, folks, if you get her book, before we continue with the story, Callie, what's the best way for them to get your book without having to go to Amazon? And also you have an
Yeah, that's the toughie. Is at the minute, yeah, I'm actually getting a box of books sent over to the US so people can get one directly from me. And that way, then I actually, because honestly, on Amazon, I get about 15 cents a book, and I haven't been paid for that book for about 3 years. It's ridiculous. So I buy them in myself, and then I sell them, and that way I can sign it too. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, on Instagram or Facebook, then they can get one directly from me once I get the shipment in, which should be in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, I'd love to do that directly rather than Amazon, because I don't like supporting them either. So.
No, I'm right there with you. I'm also an author, folks, and you know that when you buy my book, please go to the website. And don't worry, we'll put out the clarion call when her books are in. Callie, hopefully you'll get a hold of me. I'll let the world know, and they're going to let everybody else know, because it's an astonishing story. But the part that makes you just like Tag, because the people that run in these circles that I run in right now are all about freedom. They are freedom from the feet up. And, the what you did so far, if the story ended right there, that would be something else, but it didn't stop there. Why don't you tell them what happened and how the government came after you?
Yeah, so obviously I became very well known. I became the most well-known UK cannabis activist. I have spoken at the UN in Geneva, or I've spoken in parliaments all over Europe. I've spoken in parliaments in London. I was arrested outside Parliament dressed as a suffragette because I was protesting against cannabis prohibition. And it was, I had got asked, I had been taken down to some offices in London, and they were asking me to basically push their medical cannabis. They've wanted to get medical cannabis in the UK for a long time. Again, it's shoddy product. It's not what people need. It has side effects because they add other stuff to it. It's just, it's disgusting. I don't want anything to do with it. I want people to be able to grow their own. Like, grow your own, look after yourself, grow your own medicine. I don't want to have to be the one to look after everybody all the time. So I want everybody to become self-sufficient. That's kind of the drive for me. And I said no to them. I said, no, I'm not interested. You don't have my son's best interests at heart. You certainly don't have my community's best interests at heart. And so I said no. And before I left the UK, it started to get a little bit hairy, and I wasn't threatened outwardly, but I started to hear in the thing that they were really cracking down, and that I was on the list. And so I was like, I'm leaving. I can't be in the UK anymore. I have to go. And so I came here. And so where it's kind of, even though it's not even legal here, which is incredible, it's federally still illegal. Even CBD is federally still illegal, which is absolutely insane. But what I have noticed in this country is that, I have a lot more freedom here, because not many people know who I am until now. But I don't mind. Again, this is the hill I'm willing to die on. And I'm exactly the same as Cody. I'm like, there's nothing more that they could do to me. Planning my son's funeral, like, there was only one step further, is that you could do worse to me. I said to you, and I think it was, who is it said it? That, when a law is unjust, we have a moral obligation to break it. And I live by that. And so if they want to come and get me, I obviously don't want to invite that in, and I also don't feel that they will, in a sense, because I felt that, I mean, I don't know. Can you imagine trying to arrest me and stick me at, like, what I did for my son and what I've done for other people? Like, they would have a fight on their hands, and they wouldn't really have a leg to stand on. So over in this country, I found it very interesting. I've helped a number of people in this country as well. Obviously, I predominantly work in the UK because that's where people most know me. And I have growers over there. I have people who make oil for me and make tinctures for me. And I get them what they need, be it legal or not legal. And so when I started to help people in this country, I found it really strange that people were being kind of directed to me. And I said, well, hang on a minute, you live in a legal state. Why can't you just go and get what you need, like, legally? And I have a story actually of a little boy in Massachusetts who was born, he was born to alcoholic parents. He ended up getting adopted out. So he had a lot of kind of fetal alcohol syndrome issues anyway. And then at 6 months old, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And he was now 2.5 years old, and he was just this brain, how they cut him open and what they'd done to him, and it's just awful. And his mum messaged me and said, listen, he's got a medical card. I'm getting this RSO from the dispensary, but it's not working. Nothing's happening. Why is this not working? I don't understand. And I said, well, let me know what's actually in it. And when I saw what was actually in it, I said, this is THCA. It's not THC. It hasn't been decarboxylated, which is a process where you heat it and it drops the acid chain. And we could go into the scientific side of it, but THCA is not enough to kill cancer cells. You need THC. And I said, this is not going to do it. And I said, listen, let me get you hooked up with the real stuff. And so I hooked her up with the real stuff. And within 2 months, I got a message saying he's in remission. This is like the first time ever he's in remission, and they can't believe it. And I said, and that's when I understood. I was like, oh, even in dispensaries, they can't actually give you what you need because there's so many stipulations. You know, you can only have certain amount of THC. You can, and so for cancer, you need to have an oil that is over 60% THC in order for it to be effective. You can't get that in a dispensary, not even in California, not even in Oregon, not in any of the legal states. You can't get it. And so legalization doesn't mean freedom. Legalization means more regulations. It means more hoops to jump through. It means more, you know, they just then start manipulating a way that suits them to give you just enough but not what you need. And this is why, you know, when we spoke about the CBD products that I make, although, you know, I think they're legal, they're probably, I don't know, but
nobody in this audience, Karen, I guarantee that.
No, I don't care either. But it was interesting because over in this country, I have looked. Before I started getting the CBD in this country, I'd looked and I was like, I can't get anything strong enough. Like you say, it was a whole pipette, and that's like 3 milligrams. Like, well, what's that going to do when an adult, for general well-being, an adult needs roughly 24 milligrams a day just for general well-being? That's like half a bottle, or that's like, nobody wants a whole mouthful of oil like that. So I was like, hang on a minute. And I saw the same issue in the UK. And so I do have a legal brand of CBD in the UK called the Activist CBD. And I have my own little company over there, and I made sure that my CBD is as strong as I can physically make it. 12 milligrams of CBD per 1 drop is my strongest one. And so people often message me and they're like, well, do you mean a whole pipette? And I'm like, no, literally 1 drop. They don't believe me. I'm like, 1 drop, because I make it so potent. Yeah, exactly. You know? And so I then got in touch with my friend who lives in Colorado, and I said, dude, can you, because obviously I have a huge network in the cannabis world now, and I said, dude, can you help me with like a distillate that I can dilute down into my own strengths of tinctures? I said, I'm sick of not being, I really got it for myself originally, because I was like, I'm sick of not being able to find it. And then the more people that know me and the bigger my network gets here, people like yourself and other friends are like, can you help me out with some CBD? I can't sleep, or I have pain, or I have this, or I have that. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I start making it for other people. I'm actually helping a number of Amish people as well, which is just that blew my mind. With high THC too, because they all have cancer. Like, the cancer through the Amish community is crazy. Wow. And yeah, and so high THC. And I was like, you know, are you okay with this? This is illegal. And they're like, God put it here. I'm like, yes. Yes, he did. We'll go with that. So, you know, I have different ways that I can help. This is why I asked you, you know, when you came to me and I said, well, what's going on? Because then that way I know what to give you, how to help you, what best avenues. Because if someone's got cancer, you absolutely need high THC. You absolutely do. THC is vital if you have cancer. But I always say, you know, don't break the law unless you have to, you know, because there's other ways. But if you have cancer, you absolutely have to break the law. And I'm willing to help anybody, no matter what they want to do. I'm just here to help. So yeah, anybody who needs any help, I'm more than happy for you to get in touch, and I can help you. Because the other thing is, it's clean. It has to be clean. It has to be organic. We grow cannabis with, you know, herbicide. California's horrendous for it. Herbicides and pesticides in their cannabis. It's not medicine anymore. It's now poison. It might as well be a cigarette. It's not going to give you anything that you need. So as far as the kind of permaculture, you know, Cody, bless his heart, like, yeah, that's exactly what my son wants to do. My son wants to grow cannabis. That's all he wants to do. He just wants to grow cannabis for the rest of his life. He sings to his babies. When Tag asked me actually to go and talk at his Midwest preparedness event, he said, come and talk. And I said, what? I don't understand what I'm going to be able to say to these people. What is it? What can I bring their message? Because usually I'm talking to, you know, medical people, or I'm at cannabis events or things like that. And he said, you'll figure it out. So I got there and I was like, do you know what? you want to prepare, you want to really be prepared, you think something's coming, then you need to start growing your own medicine. You need to start growing stuff that you can use to keep yourself healthy, because what happens when there is no medical system for you to go to, or you don't want to be part of that matrix anymore? You have to then be able to look after yourself. You have to know what certain plants do certain things. It doesn't have to be cannabis, comfrey, other things, lots of other different herbs. But don't just concentrate on stocking up in food. Don't just concentrate on having a bunch of ammo, because if you're on heart pills and you can't get those heart pills anymore, you're going to run out before the ammo does. Like, you have to make sure that you can get yourself solid in that and collect medicine and keep medicine, make tinctures, they last forever. But also change your diet, get on top of yourself now, prepare, get your house in order. Get this house in order, because you need to get off those pharmaceutical medications. You have to, otherwise you're at their beck and call. You need them. And if you want to be away from them, you can't need a system that you don't want to be in either. You can't, it doesn't work like that. So I urge everybody to try and make their own tinctures, make their own medicines, stockpile those kinds of things. Plus now, look at your diet, look at your nutrition, look at your movement, look at what you're doing, and get healthy. Prevention is better than cure. It really, really is.
Well, Callie, before it's all said and done, I got a feeling you're going to have more business than you know what to do with, based on the conversations I'm seeing in the chat right now. Everybody wants to know first. Michelle, I know, has a series of questions that we got to get to, but I'm not aware of how much time you're able to devote here, because I'm sure there's a number of people. Do you have a little bit of time for some
I have all the time in the world. It's a Sunday. I have all of the time in the world for you.
Okay, let's so before we move on, because I know some people are going to come in, some are going to come out, tell them the best way to get a hold of you. I had to do it through email. Is that going to be?
Yeah, email is absolutely fine. So email is Callie Blackwell Consultancy at gmail.com, and you can probably share the email. Also, I am at Hope_dealer254 on Instagram. I'm Callie Blackwell on Facebook. You should be able to find me on there as well. I have my own page. But yeah, I also have a link tree that I could probably send you, my link tree, which has everything on there as well. So if you want, I can send it to you, and then you can add it later on if you want to do that. And that literally has all of my socials and my email and everything. And so yeah, people can get in touch with me that way.
We'll link that so people can get a hold of you.
And Callie, before we get into the Q&A part of it, I want to also ask, we're a big part. I just spent the last 2 weekends showing people how to produce, basically how to butcher their own meat in pigs and chickens and all this other stuff. Do you do any classes, or would you be interested in doing any classes in the future? Because Lord knows we got a lot of people out there that, Michelle does tinctures all the time, mostly for our sheep and stuff like that. Nice. And so you'll have to come up, because you're English, so I know you're going to need to eat some of this sheep we got up here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is better than that hair sheep. This is hair sheep, so it's a totally different flavor. But we'll have to get you on the first thing smoking up here for a whole bunch of reasons. But do you do classes? Right now people are dying for in-person classes to know how to do a lot of this stuff. And by the way, folks, if you don't know how to do the tinctures, look, she's got some of this high-speed Snoop Doggy Dogg bubonic chronic over here that it's not, it doesn't get you high or anything, but it's hitting the right spots. It's hitting the right notes. Do you do any classes?
I haven't as of yet. No, I did a couple of classes back in the UK back in the day, where I taught people how to make cannabis oil from, I said, you bring your own cannabis or hemp, it doesn't matter. And we can make it. I can teach you how to make it from there, teach you how to make RSO, FICO. I can teach people how to make tinctures. It's very, very easy. It's just about getting the main product. As soon as you've got the product, you can dilute it into whatever strength that you need, what you want. And again, we can put it in balms. We can, there's lots of different ways that we can get it into us. And it's that CBD as well, because it's a whole plant. It has a little bit of THC in there. We get the entourage effect, and the entourage effect is where all the cannabinoids work wonderfully together, and they give you that whole plant experience. And our endocannabinoid system absolutely loves the cannabinoids. It's just a supplement. It's a vital nutritional herb. It's the same as if you didn't have vitamin C, you'd get scurvy. It's the same. We need to have cannabinoids. Doesn't matter where we get them from, but we can't get cannabinoids like we used to from fruit and vegetables and meat, because we're nutritionally starved. Our bellies are full, but we're nutritionally starved. And so cannabis just happens to be a really easy plant to go. It's literally a weed. You try and kill it if you want to. Try and kill it. But if you really want to get the most out of it, then obviously you need to cultivate it, but it will literally grow on its own, very easy. Plus it neutralizes the earth. It sequesters all the CO2 and it gives us back. You can actually plant it near radioactive spills. Like if there's been a spill, you can plant it near it and it will suck all the nasties out of the ground, and you can still use the plant afterwards.
Wow.
Because it completely neutralizes it. It's incredible. You can build out of hemp. You can, cannabis will save the world if only the government just get out of the bloody way. But of course they won't, because that's right. Legalization means the government can tax it and they can control it and they can come around and see what you're doing with it. And I am all for freedom. I'm for freedom. I haven't been in the medical matrix for 10 years. I walked away from it. I won't see a doctor. I'm like, I'll figure stuff out myself. I've said jokingly, although I probably mean it, but I'd rather die in the woods on mushrooms than ever see a doctor ever again. Because if I can't sort myself out with what I know, then I'm okay to go. I'm good. We're not all going to live forever. So, but yeah, I would love to do in-person classes, or just come and talk, or just educate, teach people about the importance of making sure that you get the right type of cannabinoids for whatever ailment that you've got, because it's not a one size fits all. Our endocannabinoid system is as unique as our fingerprint, and there's lots of different strains, lots of different cannabinoids, flavonoids, terpenes, esters, so much within the cannabis plant that all have medicinal benefits. And it's really important that we get the right kind of cannabinoids for the right kind of ailment. So yeah, I'd love to do something like that. It'd be exciting.
We'll definitely put the name out there, because honestly, I know this is going to go far and wide. We already have a popular podcast, and the YouTube is going to help. I mean, this is one of only 2 times we've ever simulcasted both, because I knew the information that you would present would be that consequential. And then after I tried this stuff for myself and saw the effect on her, that she's not freaking out, losing her mind, biting my head off. No. No, but once well, yeah, I mean, it's hitting the spot in the right way. So so Callie, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave you with Michelle for a moment and the audience. I'm going to go grab my thing so I can put your contact information into the chat for all those that want to know. And then later on that watch this video, we'll have it listed down below, all the ways you can get a hold of Callie. But Michelle, go ahead and fire away.
Yeah, I just have a list of questions. I've been writing down.
One moment also. Amy and all the others in there, we'll get to yours as well. I'm sorry about that.
That's all right. I was writing down questions as they came up, but I had a couple. We have a friend, and I believe he's watching, who has a possible benign tumor that is above his kidney. And so I was wondering what you would recommend for him.
So the wonderful thing is that every single person that's ever come to me has been helped with cannabis. Now, to the levels and the degrees that they get helps depends on lots of different things, how, pharmaceuticals they're on, like what they've got going on, what they're doing with their diet and stuff. But what the endocannabinoid system does in our bodies is it actually, it's striving for homeostasis, which is balance on a cellular level. And so the endocannabinoid system actually sits above every other system in our body, and it trickles down and creates homeostasis within every other system, lymphatic, circulatory, digestive, whatever. And so even with something benign, the body is going to be striving for homeostasis. Homeostasis is the opposite of disease. So when we're in homeostasis, we can't be diseased. And so cannabis I can't say that it would get rid of it, but I would say that it would definitely help, and it's worth a try. And it's going to help bring that body back into homeostasis, which eventually is going to, then the body's going to heal the body can heal itself. The body is incredible, but we have to give the body what it needs and not what it doesn't need. And so cannabis is something the body needs, and it can work there, and it will, I would say that it's definitely worth trying. And who knows, I've helped people with benign brain tumors in the past as well, who've seen massive reductions in their brain tumors. It may be that we need to go a little bit higher with the THC. So it may be that he needs to be a bit more willing to break the law a bit more. But what I would say is I always work with people with an equal amount of CBD, because CBD is the antidote to the psychoactive effects of the THC. So when you go out there and you smoke weed, like there's virtually no CBD in there. And so you then end up with the psychoactive effects. It can become very uncomfortable. So I always work with people with at least an equal amount of CBD to really reduce those psychoactive effects. So it can be more of a long-term loving relationship than kind of like, oh my God, I'm so high that I don't ever want to feel like this. So I'd be more than happy to work with him and talk to him see what we can come up with. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And I also had a someone that asked, what cultivar do you recommend for home growers?
So in the US, in the UK, I would always tell people, like, if you're going to grow it yourself, like, grow the highest THC that you can possibly grow, because if you can get CBD legally, it doesn't really make sense to grow a plant, because in the UK, like, growing CBD, growing hemp, it doesn't matter what you grow, it's all illegal. You're not allowed to do it. And so I would say to people in the UK that if you are going to grow cannabis, grow a really high THC strain, go on something like Leafly, where you can see, you can look for a strain depending on your ailment. Does it need to be higher in CBN? Do you need a little bit more sleep? Do you need to be relaxed? Or are you like, do you need motivation? What is it you need? And then you can then grow a plant that's specifically for you. Grow one that's really high in THC and get your CBD legally, and then mix the two together, put the two together. I will also say something really incredible about the cannabis plant is that if you take a cannabis seed and you put it in your mouth and you just hold it in your mouth for like 30 seconds, it actually reads your saliva. And when it grows, it will grow to your endocannabinoid system.
Oh my
You gotta be
goodness.
kidding. Oh my goodness. You got to be kidding me. Here's why I'm tripping. Because we just got back from Canada, and she's going to know exactly where I'm going with this. We just got back from Canada working with probably the #1 permaculture orchard guy on the planet.
Amazing.
His name is Stefan Subkowiak. He says he doesn't know where he got the download, but he said the good Lord, he felt like this, that the very same thing, that when you put something into your mouth, remember when you smell it first, he had this theory, this long working theory, that when you smell it, that your body is already creating the enzymes you need to digest it.
Yeah.
And what you're describing is basically that there's this symbiosis that we have with plants. And with what we do, we kind of see it. That is absolutely extraordinary, that somehow the plant's like, okay, hey, bro, you got this issue. I'm going to send out, as Michelle knows, that these bacteria and fungi basically go out and do the shopping list for the plant, for each individual plant. The plant says, hey, this is what I need, this is what I need, this is what I need. And the bacteria and fungi go out afterwards and they go pick up everything that plant leads. So now we put ourselves into it. That is astonishing. Good night. I know it's not legal here in North Carolina, but I'll tell you what, there's no shortage of hooter bandits running around these mountains. I'm pretty sure.
A guerrilla grow. Yeah, I've been tempted. Obviously, I'm down in Georgia. I'm like an hour and a half away from you, but I sit on 60 acres. It's my husband's grandfather's 60 acres, and I'm like, I keep looking around, going, I could stick a guerrilla grow in here. So I'm like, I really want to do it. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of going back to like the best cultivar as well. Just something that came to my mind is that try and find one that yields you as much as you can possibly get out of it as well, and really learn how to cultivate that plant. Look at scrogging. If you don't know what scrogging is, look at that, where you put out a net and then you can chop it. I'm not the best grower. You want to speak to my son about that. He, when it comes to growing, he is, but yeah, there are ways of growing it. And honestly, I don't know so much about here, but I think that I have a lot of police officer friends in the UK, funnily enough, and all of them have said to me, like, I don't care about people smoking weed. I don't even care about people growing weed. As long as they're not stealing the electricity, they're not having gangs, they're not hurting other people to get the. He said, I don't care. Like, no pot smoker has ever caused us any trouble. And I was like, no, because we're too chilled out. We don't want any trouble. Just, So yeah, I think a lot of North Carolina is fairly backwards in its sense, though, isn't it, when it comes to cannabis? I mean, they're a real far behind, and Georgia are it's the Bible Belt area. I get it, I do understand, but God put it here. Like, this is what gets me with Christianity. And so it's like that God put it here, and it says in the Bible, I give you all, seed bearing fruit, and like, come on now, it wasn't an accident.
It depends on the kind of Christian, because we make no bones about the fact that we are. I mean, both of us we're bought and paid for Christians, through and through. But at the same time, I'm not going to fall into the orthodoxy because some guy in a robe said, this is what it says, this is what it, some people are so sanctimonious, they'd rather see you die than actually say, okay, this is a plant that grows naturally. There's so many different things that grow naturally. Even the comfrey, we're probably one of the biggest comfrey sellers on the planet. And
But comfrey is also demonized
Right.
because it's so helpful. They
It-
have to
Yeah.
demonize.
Exactly.
right,
Yeah.
and we're seeing the opportunity because we were asking before we started broadcasting, the topical usage of being able to kick up what we currently use with some of your methods, and we'll talk later about that. So, Michelle, let's go back to some of the other questions you have. She's got an entire look, Callie. If you don't, yeah, she's
Oh,
got
I
an
love it. I love it.
notebook over here, and there's a number of others out there too that are that are in this chat. So we're going to probably be here a minute. So why don't you go ahead and fire away, honey? Plus, I got some too.
So there was somebody that wrote in the chat, how does it help with hormone regulation or inflammation?
So CBD is there's like over 100 plus different cannabinoids within the plant: THC, CBD, CBN. So there's loads of them. Now, the ones that we mainly concentrate are the ones that most well known is the THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, CBD, cannabidiol. They're the two that we really kind of know. And the THC is obviously psychoactive, but the THC is also the painkiller, the one responsible for neurogenesis, regrowing of neural pathways, and the one responsible for promoting apoptosis, which is cell suicide, and that's how it kills cancer cells. So, oh, hey, Tag. And so CBD, cannabidiol, is actually the anti-inflammatory side of things. So it's the amazing anti-inflammatory. It's an antispasmodic, anti-seizure. And so when you have THC and CBD together, it's like taking your, or you call them differently here. I had to give brand it like Tylenol and what's your anti-inflammatory one? Like we have paracetamol and Nurofen, but it's like taking the painkiller and the anti-inflammatory together. And so, yeah, CBD for anti-inflammatory is absolutely incredible. It's a really powerful anti-inflammatory. And then when it comes to regulating hormones, again, we're going for homeostasis. So we're going for balance. So if you have high blood pressure, it brings it down. If you have low blood pressure, it takes it up. If you're overweight, it helps you lose weight. If you're underweight, it helps you eat. It's like it is striving for that balance wherever your body is meant to be, because we're also wholly unique. Wherever your body is supposed to be, that's where it's going to get you. And so if you have hormone regulation issues, and I also suffer with those, like as I'm getting a little bit older, and so I find that during that time of the month, I up my CBD consumption, because it really does go a long way to help just balance things out, and help us ride the waves. And plus then we're a little bit more chilled out and we don't get so so bothered by it,
Right.
But yeah, it definitely works for all those types of things as well. And I would also look at something like maca powder. MACA is also something really good at balancing hormones, maca powder. Yeah.
Okay.
Kelly, good night. Hey, before we get back to the questions, I want you to, and by the way, I want to give a shout out to Tag from Life Done Free, y'all. If you haven't already, go over there, subscribe, check him out. He's doing fantastic work. It's because of him that I'm even aware that Callie exists right now. So, and she's been such a blessing already. Hey, Tag, I bet I got something you ain't got.
I bet he does.
Well, this worked out even better. Well, Tag, she's got me all hooked up over here. And hey, folks, you want to reach out to her. Like me, I'll just lay it down straight. I'm not going to obey unjust laws. And if you got something to say about it, just send my mail to the county jail. I'm not worried about crossing state lines with illegal meat, illegal milk. I mean, if more of us just say, hey, I'm not playing along with this, you know what? They're going to have to leave you alone, because honestly, you got to figure there's a whole lot of people in this rank or power structure, perceived power structure, that think that they have sway over us just because they own the police and all that other stuff. Look, I'm not playing by the games. If you want to come get me, knock yourself out. But hey, send my mail to the county jail. But Callie, I do have a question here. And the one that you sent me, now, I got to make this distinction, because a number of people out there that are listening to this or in the chat might be a little confused as I was. Now, an entire dropper of the strongest stuff they sell at this place that we were getting it out of Kentucky, an entire dropper was 50 milligrams. I'm talking entire dropper. Right here, you're telling me one drop of your stuff is 10 milligrams?
Yeah, and I can make it stronger than that. I can make it up to 25.
Oh, well, then why am I holding the 10? Let's do hey.
Because I wanted you to come in, like I wanted to, because if I did it one with 25 for you, then like one drop is 25, two drops is 50, and that can be a bit like overkill. We want to go in. I didn't want to start you really low. I wanted to start you where like one drop 3 times a day would give you your just over your general well-being dose, and then we could add upon that. It's easier to add than it is to take away. And of course, if I make it really strong, then one drop is 25 milligrams. So you know, but yeah, I mean, if
he doesn't care. He's taking 3
Yeah.
right out of the gate. So,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I mean, folks,
we can definitely make it stronger. If you want it stronger, we can. But I think that's a really good place to start, 10 milligrams per drop, because then 10 milligram increments, you know, 3 drops a day, 4 drops a day, you know, or however, 6 drops at night time if you want to, whatever. But yeah, we can definitely make it stronger the next time. No problem.
hey, for the folks out there that are automatically going to ask, hey, Billy, how are you aggrandizing yourself with all this? Answer is, I'm not. I don't get paid anything. When I heard about Callie, it took me right back to Cody. And this dude was absolutely maimed by the mainstream medical system. Remember, y'all, MD does not stand for medical deity. It really doesn't. So unless I got a gunshot wound or I have a broken bone, I'm not seeing an MD. I'll do what I've been doing. I'll see a naturopath. I'll see a chiropractor. I'll see somebody like Callie. So for all those that are wondering, like, hey, how are you aggrandizing yourself with this? I'm not. I want anybody who's suffering right now and can be helped by what she's doing to reach out to Callie. I put her email in the contact thing. I don't want to do more than that, or I'm going to screw it up. But it will be attached to this video, and it will always be attached to the podcast we have as well. Michelle, what else you got there?
So we had somebody ask a question, and I believe what they're trying to say is, how do we help our loved ones understand that this plant is helpful, is beneficial? It's been demonized by medical, government, everybody. So how do we help people understand that it's beneficial?
Yeah, that's, you know, this is something I'm asked a lot over the years. Is I have people come to me and they say, you know, my uncle, my mom, my dad, whatever, I know that cannabis would help them, but they don't want to know because of those reasons. Can you please talk to them and convince them? And I'm like, no, I can't convince anybody. But what I will say is that, I mean, my own parents won't even touch it, which is like, you know, it's just crazy to me. But I also, when I first started this and became an activist, I was like, I need to wake everybody up and everybody needs to know. And I was really evangelistic about it. And now I'm like, do you know what? Those that are open to it, then they will come and they will want to be, at least have an open mind about it, at least be open-minded and be willing to listen to some education about it. Cannabis, as nature intended, as God put here, is very balanced in the THC and CBD. So it's medicinal. There is no psychoactive effects as such because it has the CBD with it. We, over the last however many hundreds, thousands of years, have manipulated that plant into a point where now cannabis is so high in THC, it doesn't have any CBD with it. And that's why we have issues. It's the man's manipulation of this plant that has caused the issue. Same with tobacco. Tobacco, many, many years ago, when you grow your own tobacco, it's very, very different than a cigarette that you get now. And it's the same. You know, if we can understand that God put this plant here and it was man that messed it up, is that if we can get back to how nature intended and understand that we have an endocannabinoid system, tell your friends and loved one, go, look, just look into the endocannabinoid system. It's there. Like how, and maybe show them videos. When I went on national TV, I knew who I was talking to. I knew that I was directing my attention on the grey army, the people who had demonized it, the people who'd grown up with the reefer madness idea. I knew I needed to talk to them. I didn't want to preach to the converted. No point. I've got to talk to the people who think it's a bad thing. And when they saw me sat on national TV with my little boy, nobody can argue with me that that's what saved his life. Nobody can argue with me. And so I kind of was able to then educate people. And my most beautiful thing when that first happened was I had people come to me who said, my mum has hated me for so long because I smoke cannabis, and now she finally gets it. Thank you so much. Now she understands why I medicate with this. Now she's willing to look because she saw you on the TV. Like, and it's amazing how, you know, just by being on the TV, you kind of, people listen to you.
Right.
And so I would say, yeah, the way to kind of I guess, is just ask your loved ones just to be open-minded, ask them to be willing to look at some information, ask them to be willing just to understand a little bit. Even if they don't want to go down that road, that's not your journey, that's theirs. But if you tell them what you can tell them and you can show them, then you've done your bit. And that's all you can do. You know, we can't save everybody. Not everybody wants to be saved. Not everybody is going to follow that path, and that's okay. But yeah, show them videos, show them information, speak to them about the endocannabinoid system, and let them kind of put 2 and 2 together.
Glenn is saying cannabis is a miracle, and Glenn's a friend of mine. Well, Glenn and I actually went to high school together, and part of my whole the whole reason I was really for the longest time against it was because of all the Hooter bandits I grew up with in school. These guys were so bombed and stoned out of their mind. I was like, man, I don't want anything to do with that. They don't even, like, hey, dude, what's up, man? You know, I mean, who knew? These guys were actually trustees of modern chemistry at the time. I did not know.
But like she said, all the CBD was taken out of it. So you
Right.
counteract that when you have the whole plan.
No, I mean, if somebody wants to go out there and smoke their socks, look, I'm a freedom lover. You do what you got to do as long as you're not hurting kids. I don't care what you do. You're not hurting kids or animals. I really don't care what they do. But it seems like I'm having some kind of feedback. Are you hearing it on your end, Michelle?
A little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Powers that should not be probably don't want us having this conversation.
Yeah, probably
Before
not.
we go to the next question, Callie, I want you to kind of cover this issue. I heard you talk about it with Tag, and it was regarding some of the powers that shouldn't be and how they tried to get you to sell out. They offered you quite a bit, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. That was when I had the meeting down in the office, and I said no. Yeah, they didn't know that I had already been in the cannabis community for a good couple of years. And when my book came out, they just presumed that I was this brand new mom, and here I was, I didn't know anything, and I was good pickings, right? So they get me down to this London office, and I'm sat there with them, and they said, you know, what is it you want? And I said, well, I mean, I want to educate, I want to make like TV show, like I want to kind of educate. At that time I was like, I want to interview, I want to kind of really get out there on kind of media platform. I want this story to go as far as it can. I want people to truly understand about cannabis, and I want the education to be there. And they said, brilliant, come with me. And they took me to this other corner of their office, and there was this whole TV studio set up. And they sat there, and I made these little videos. They're still on YouTube somewhere. I made these little videos, and they were like, okay, so there's more of that where that came from. If that's what you want, we can give you that. You know, we have all the leads. They were governmental people. I knew who they were. I already knew who they were because, again, I've been in the cannabis community for 2 years at that point, already knew. And then they sat me around this big table, and I had these 2 guys sat in front of me who are still pretty heavy hitters within the cannabis community in the UK. And I'm watching, and it makes me so sad because I'm watching them and I'm watching what they're doing, and it's going in the way that I really didn't want it to go. But I warned people, I tried, you know, and people didn't want to listen to me. So I sat there on this big table, and they sat opposite me and said, so, you know, we just want you to help us push this across the line. We need you to basically be our poster girl and boy. And all you have to do is say what we want you to say. I've never been one to say what someone wants me to say. Like, I've always been a rebel. I've always been the naughty misfit. So I said, okay, you know, and they said, do you have any questions? And I said, well, yeah, I actually do have questions. I said, what do you think about dispensaries? And they said, oh, no, we can't have dispensaries here. We can't have that kind of thing. You know, what did they say? Advertising laws wouldn't allow it. And I was like, that didn't make any sense to me. And I said, okay. And they said, any other questions? I said, yeah. I said, what about grow your own? I said, that's so important to me. I said, I'm not willing to work with anybody who's not pushing grow your own. I said, because ultimately that's where I want to get to. That's freedom for me, is that you're allowed to grow your own medicine, and the way you're allowed to grow your own tomatoes and do what you want with them, like, should be the same for cannabis. And they looked at me and they said, oh, no, Mrs. Blackwell, no, we can't allow people to grow their own medicine. He said, wouldn't you rather, this is where he fucked up. He said, wouldn't you rather that you had something for your son who could, that was always the same, that was made in a lab, that was tested, that was this and the other, than something someone knocked up in their kitchen? And I said, well, the things that have been made in a lab almost killed my kid, and what I knocked up in my kitchen saved his life. So I think you're talking to the wrong person here. And their jaws dropped, and they said, well, I don't think you understand what you're turning down. And I did understand what I was turning down. They had offered me millions. And they said to me that, you know, you never have to worry about money ever again. Your children will never have to worry about money ever again. Your children's children will probably never have to worry about money ever again. You will be looked after. You will be protected. Darren will never have to worry about the law looking over his shoulder. You would never have to worry about the law. You know, they pulled out everything that to try and I said, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. I said, you don't have the same goals as me. I said, you're asking me to throw my community under the bus, and I'm not here to take the chocolate. I'm not willing. And yeah, and so I could have been sat pretty nicely in a mansion somewhere, but I would have never been able to enjoy that kind of money, knowing what I'd done in order to get it. Like, I'm not here for the dollar either. Money doesn't mean anything to me. Money is just I like having it because it buys me freedom, and it, you know, allows me to, you know, get my children here, and I can pay for tickets, and you know, it's a necessary evil at that point. But my motivation is not money. And I think they thought, because I was poor and from a council estate, you know, I'm from I don't know what you call council estates over here, but I'm from like a pretty rough area where everybody was poor. And I guess they just thought if they dangled the money carrot at me, that I'd be willing to sell my soul, and my soul isn't for sale. So I turned them down, and I'm glad I did. Because I kept my integrity, and that's such an important thing for me.
Now I got to know, before Michelle goes to the next question. Now I understand you're here in the United States of Amnesia, and particularly down in I think Georgia.
Yeah.
Have you picked up any of the way? I mean, I just want to kick it off to the side a little bit here. I noticed you don't talk like a Southerner yet. So
No.
have you adopted the American accent yet? I mean, for when they hear you, they probably think, "Oh my goodness, she probably came from another planet." I mean, you're in a strange place down there. So I got to know, can you do an American accent yet, or have you been there long enough to do that?
The only American accent I can do is the one that you hear on movies when you're growing up, which apparently is quite Californian. It's like, it's that sorority thing or whatever happens over there. It's like, hey, how you doing? Like, I can't even do it now. I'm from the spot. But I can't for the life of me do a Southern accent. I'm like, my husband is from Georgia. He's a Southern boy. He grew up in a Baptist family, and he makes me. We still have to translate for each other sometimes. So I look at him and go, "What?" Like, and because I call them tomatoes and he calls them maters. And I'm like, "What?"
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But it's funny because I use English words. I don't say trash can, I use bin. I don't say trunk, I say boot. I don't say candy, I say sweets. And so there's all these different things that my husband has absolutely adopted all of my English words, but he says them in an American accent. So he'll ask people like, "Hey, where's the bin?" And people are like, "Bin? What do you mean?" And he's like, "Oh, sorry." And so it's quite funny to hear these English words coming out of his deeply Georgia mouth, and it really does confuse people. So, but he has already told me I'm not allowed to lose my accent. I'm not allowed to. Because he was one of the things he fell in love with is my accent. And he actually said to me when he first met me, he said, "I could listen to you talk forever." And I said, "You will be careful, fella." I said, "Because I can talk." I said, "You be careful what you wish for." And but it's funny, being an English person in America, I kind of can get away with murder because all I have to do is just talk in an English accent and say, "Excuse me, would you mind?" And I can really lay it on thick. People they'll do anything for me because I'm English. I don't know.
They've been doing it forever here in the United States of Amnesia, because honestly, even in our media, whenever they wanted to sell somebody, like the oil spill up in Alaska years ago, they brought in a bunch of English people because they know that through Hollywood for years and years in the United States of Amnesia, that we automatically assume that just because that person has an English accent, that
We're
they're
nice. Yeah.
And honestly, you could give somebody, we automatically think, "Oh, these guys are intelligent, man. They'll listen to that accent." But you know what would really be funny is if your husband could kind of metastasize those English sayings and just drop them all over the South. Now, I can see it right now before a UFC fighter getting in there. "Boy, I'm about to knock the granny right out of you."
Smash the granny out of it. I come out with these sayings sometimes, and his family or his friends just look at me like, "What is she talking about?" I have so many little. I got his friend a couple of years ago, and I said, "Oh, someone was all fur coat and no knickers," and they were like, "What does that mean?" And I heard recently it's all what is it all cowboy, all hat and no horse or something.
Yeah,
like
all
that.
cowboy, no hat.
That's it. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's like my fur coat and no knickers," but just
Yeah, I
of course,
wouldn't.
the knickers are pants. Knickers are so
Yeah, where I come from, that's a community. That's what we called each other growing up. So I wouldn't say that there are any black churches down there. And
knickers.
Yeah,
No,
I
there's
heard
a
it.
key in there.
I heard it the first time. Yeah. What's up, man?
The knicker. That's all right. But I said it in an English accent, so it's okay.
Yeah,
I get away with it, right?
Oh my goodness, man! Hey, if there was ever a short that needs to get made, I think we. Okay, so I guess I'm done with the comic relief, at least until we talk about some more English things. Michelle, what else do you got for us?
Well, I think we had somebody ask how if it would help with Alzheimer's.
So yeah, it does help with Alzheimer's. Especially quite high levels of THC help with Alzheimer's. I've worked with a couple of people over the years, and I mean it at that late stage, like at that stage in people's lives. I mean, the chances of it actually undoing all of that, because Alzheimer's is usually down to a lot of aluminum, and it's due to find a lot of aluminum in people's brains, because the synapses in the brains obviously fire off, and when there's aluminium there present, like it refracts it reflects it. And so it's really important to 2 tablespoons of coconut oil a day is a really, really good thing for people with Alzheimer's. Obviously removing all kind of aluminium cookware and stuff like this. And then cannabis, higher levels of THC. I have seen people who were pretty lost in their own worlds, and they just had a little bit, and it kind of gave them enough cognitive, like they were cognitive again. And so will it save their life? Will it cure them? Probably not. But this is the thing as well, as I talk about cannabis a lot, is that sometimes when people come to me, it's too late. It really is, that they are so cut, burnt and poisoned. Oh, don't talk about the goat, because it's been cut, burnt and poisoned.
Yeah.
Because they've been so cut, burnt and poisoned beyond recognition. It's like, do we have enough time to undo all of that damage for how long they've got left, you know? And it becomes that kind of balancing act. But what I do say to people is that, and I would ever hope for this for my life, is that just to be here as long as possible for as pleasant as possible. And that's something that cannabis can definitely give you, even if it can't keep you alive forever, because it can't. It can prolong your life. It can give you a way better quality of life. Like you said, Cody and his dignity. That's something that I've seen with cannabis, is dignity. Is there something you don't get in the usual pathways of the pharmaceutical industry? Is there is no dignity at all. And so cannabis can give you dignity, even with something like Alzheimer's. Yeah.
Wow. Oh shoot! I had myself, because of the technical issues, I'm having to kind of mute my mic here. People love you. They absolutely love you, especially since the N-word.
It's spelled K-N-I-C-K-E-R. Nicker.
Okay, so I'll make sure. Yeah, I know a whole lot of knickers out there too. And they ain't all black. You got a different word for them, but they're knickers. Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. No, Callie, I mean, there is so much awesome information out there. But hey, I know we're going to try to get through every question here, but you have got, Tag and Bobby told me this story, both of which are in the chat right now. Look, I am a permaculture designer. I'm also a butcher. I wear a whole lot of hats, and I've been known to put on some knickers every now and then, especially on 4th of July. That's another story altogether. But I got to know this story about this goat. I mean, okay, please. I mean, you got to tell. Everybody wants to know. Okay, there's people talking. Billy with a British accent. Yeah, I'm going to knock the granny right out of you, mate.
That was kind of Australian there, but that was good.
Okay. Hey, close enough, right? Where'd they come from? You saying all you criminals from Australia. You guys send all your criminals down to Australia. We do the
Yeah.
same thing, but we send them to the hood. You got to tell me for real, what is up with this goat story?
So a number of years ago, I was actually vegan for 6.5 years, and I was vegetarian for like 11 years. And so, but I eat meat now. I lived in Hungary for a little while, and while I lived in Hungary, I bought like a little farmhouse because it's real cheap out there, like stupidly cheap. And so I had an acre of land, and I was in this valley, and I looked up, and there was all these little goats on the hill over there, and I was like, oh, aren't they cute? And then I realized they were all being sold for meat, and so I was like, no, I can't let that happen. So I had to rescue them all. So I ended up buying 4 baby goats, all male. And they lived, and they were happily, and it was okay, and it was fine. They got to about 6 months old, and the 6 month old alpine goats are like they were Nubian goats, I think they were. I had one little boa goat with the long ears and the eyelashes, but the others were fairly big ones with big old horns. And I don't know what happened. I think the next door neighbor, they sprayed their vine leaves or something and put them over, and the goat ate them and died. And so one just like died in front of me. And I was like, oh, I thought goats are really easy to look after. They're really not. And then the next one just died in its sleep. And then the third one, called Jeff, I named him after Jeff Ditchfield. The third one, called Jeff, because I had Cheech and Chong, Mr. Nice, and Jeff. And Jeff, Cheech and Chong died, Mr. Nice died, and then Jeff. And Jeff got really, really sick. Now I was giving it molasses, and I was trying to give it activated charcoal. I was doing all sorts and stuff, and no, nothing was happening. And this thing was just like, everything was coming out of its back end, and everything I put in, it couldn't get up. So I called the vet, and we called the vet out, and the vet was German, and he came out, and I said, Auf Wiedersehen, can you do something? And he said, no, if you want it done, do it yourself. I was like, what do you mean do it myself? I'm vegan. I don't want to kill a goat, and I don't know how to kill a goat. And so my ex-husband, who was there at the time, we sat and we spoke about it, and I said, well, how are you going to do it? And he said, I'll just suffocate it. And I said, what do you mean you're just going to suffocate it? And he said, well, we didn't have a gun. He said, he didn't really want to stab it or anything like that either. He says, I'll just suffocate it. It'll only take like 20 seconds. And so he said, look, I'll do it tomorrow. If the goat is still alive, like, I'll do it tomorrow. So I went down that evening. I gave the goat a bunch of cannabis oil, hoping that like it would be the first person to ever die from cannabis oil, because nobody's ever died. I was like, this goat, like, please just let it like die. And it didn't. I got up in the morning, and my ex-husband had gone. I didn't even know where he'd gone. He's gone somewhere else. He completely shirked his responsibility and disappeared on me. So I go down to the field, and there's the goat, like just looking at me, can't get up. It's like his all his little legs are underneath, and I just thought, oh my god, I'm gonna have to do this. And I didn't. It took me about 3/4 of an hour. I was pacing up and down. I was like, God, give me the strength to do this. And I thought, there's a bucket there, maybe I can drown it. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that, because that's like really horrific. Like, and this is a 6-month-old goat, like this thing. So eventually I decided that I would choke it out. And that's what that was my choice. So I gave it a little bit of food. I gave it a little bit of water, like his last meal. I gave it some more cannabis. And I was like, okay, fella, like, just play, like, go along with me. I turned over its feed thing. I sat on it. I put my left leg like underneath its head. I put my right leg over the top of it. I put my arm round underneath, held it like this, held its mouth kind of like this, and then I just put my hand over its nose. And I just thought, it only take like 20 seconds, right? No, it doesn't take 20 seconds to choke out a goat. It takes ages to choke out a goat. And it was horrible. It was the most horrendous thing I'd ever done, because I felt the goat kind of under, and it couldn't breathe and everything. So, and then it went limp. So I let go, and then it went. I was like, oh no! Like, so I had to start again. And I was like, oh my god! Like, just die. And holding on, and eventually its little eye, because goat have slitty eyes, and it went out, and I realised that his little tongue was hanging out. And I was like, oh my god! And I was mortified. I was absolutely beside myself. And Tag's thing of this is, because he goes, why did you choke it out? And I said, well, because I didn't think I could commit to stabbing it. And he said, so you think you can't commit to stabbing it, but you could choke it out? I said, well, I did jiu-jitsu for a number of times. I was also a bouncer for 7 years. I know I can choke things out. I don't know I can stab anything. I was like, I had more confidence in these than I did in this. I said, so
Oh my goodness. You can't make this up. You're the first human being I've ever known in my life to strangle a goat. I mean, I've seen people get strangled. I mean, that's exactly what you're doing with a rear naked choke and a number of
yeah,
other.
that's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You did a Randy Couture rear naked choke on this thing. Hey, I guess that's the way of doing it. You know, I don't need strangled animals, but hey, you know what, Callie? I tell you what, in exchange, I just got finished showing a bunch of people over the last couple of weeks how to process animals. I know you're down there with all those good old boys down in Texas, but if you want to know next, what's that?
She's in Georgia.
Oh, I'm sorry, Georgia. Same thing. No, I'm
it's
kidding.
not.
I'm kidding. Hey, you think the cannabis lobby's bad? Boy, you ain't seen nothing when these guys get loose. Al Qaeda's never going to mess with anybody in the South. You can believe that. So, yeah, if you ever want to know how to do that properly, we're doing classes all the time. Who ever knew? Somebody says UFC Ultimate Farming. Oh my goodness! Wow. Well, you are a hoot interview. I'm sure Michelle's got some more questions for you, Callie. But
I have a couple more questions, but I think I'm just going to preface this by asking people to shoot you an email with some of these specific questions, because there's somebody that's wanting to know if you can send it to New Zealand. So I'll let you.
Probably ought to work.
Probably not, to be honest. Because New Zealand is really, really, really strict, and yeah, I have had stuff from the UK be sent to New Zealand before, and it did get through. But if you get caught with it coming in, I mean, it's up to you. Like, I'll send it. I can't guarantee that it'll get there, but I'll send it. You know, we can do our best to get it there. Just know that on the other end of things, it's if they catch it coming in, you know.
Yeah, Canadians were asking. I know there are a lot of Canadians that listen to this podcast as well, and they were asking as well. I guess at the end of the day, they're probably going to have to reach out to you specifically to really help with a lot of that. Callie, another thing that's near and dear to my heart as a veteran, we have record numbers right now. People like, you know, the Sean Ryan show and a number of others out there talk about this extensively. Right now, the official numbers are somewhere around 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. We know that the real numbers are closer to about 45 a day are committing suicide. They've been on what do you call those happy pills? The serotonin reuptake inhibitors and a number of others. And it says right there in the insert that it could cause suicidal ideation and a number of other things. Is probably to a certain extent a rhetorical question, but I would imagine that you've seen some pretty good turnaround. I mean, obviously with your son, I mean, he was suicidal. There was that other substance you talked about that made him eat and then got him on the straight and narrow. Is that stuff widely available, or is it hard to come by?
I mean, that's the cannabis oil. That was cannabis too. It's cannabis oil so I kind of saved him twice with cannabis oil. Once was the first time was a tincture, and the second time was the undiluted oil that I now put into tinctures to make it, you know, however strength I want. But yeah, it was all cannabis. What I will say for things like I have complex PTSD. I also have PTSD, which is probably fairly, like, I think it's understandable. And I've worked with a number of people over the years who didn't want to be on antidepressants because antidepressants stop you feeling anything. And it's very important that we feel. It's really important that we feel. It's just important that we understand that we need to learn how to process those feelings and not numb ourselves, because numbing ourselves to feelings means that we don't feel human anymore. And that's why a lot of people end up killing themselves, because they just can't bear in not feeling anything. Cannabis is amazing for veterans, and the reason being is that THC actually stops you dreaming. And so a lot of veterans obviously struggle with dreams and flashbacks, especially if combat, you know, or even myself with, you know, hospital. Like, if I smell a hospital, I hear an ambulance, like, these things just still trigger me. And so THC, can stop them dreaming. So actually it can really help them get better sleep and not be so, you know, frazzled by not sleeping, because not getting some sleep is like really, really detrimental for us. It helps regulate emotions. It helps calm down. It's cannabis. I really wish they'd give veterans cannabis before they give them anything else, because it's just, and it's not going to have those horrible side effects. You know, it doesn't have the detrimental side effects that these pharmaceuticals have. I mean, it can be uncomfortable if you have too much THC without the appropriate amount of CBD. It can be uncomfortable, but long term, it's not going to hurt you. It will wear off. You know, go to sleep. Just go to sleep, and it will wear off. Or eat something. There's lots of different ways to alleviate the high. You can eat vitamin C, dark chocolate, like lemon juice, CBD. You know, there's lots of different ways to alleviate that high if that becomes uncomfortable. But we don't have to be high to be healed. It doesn't have to be that way. So I would definitely say to veterans, yeah, please look at cannabis before you look at those other things, because cannabis can definitely help.
Well, this stuff is definitely working for me. And it's funny you mentioned that, because Michelle, when I told you, I woke up this morning, I never, ever, ever remember my dreams, ever. And I told you I had 2 of them. I honestly remembered. Now, one of them was absolutely ghastly, but at least I remembered it. I mean, I imagined a friend basically jumping in a Mack truck, and she ran into a brick wall, walked out of it. It's funny that we're talking about this. And in the dream, she basically walked out of the hospital. She's falling all over herself, and they just, all right, have a nice day. Yeah, that's a freaky dream. But you know what? For me, that is something else, because I don't remember my dreams. And 2 of them I had last night, and I remember them. Like I said, one of them wasn't fantastic, but hey, it is what it is. Now, one person in here, I had it up a moment ago, Callie, they asked about seeds. I mean, I got to be honest with you. From what I learned from Stefan Simkowiak and what you've presented here today, I'm wondering if I shouldn't try growing this stuff. And I got friends up in Virginia that might help me out with that, because I know it's legal up there.
Mm-hmm. I think they can have 12 in Virginia. I think it's 12 or
plants.
4
is it 4
plants
per adult? Is it 4 per adult? Oh yeah, no, it's up higher. It's up there. They can have 12. I think it's Connecticut or somewhere up higher. But yeah, Virginia, yeah, to have as adults, just to have some plants. I mean, the best way to get your seeds is to grow your own plants and then get them to seed, and then take the seeds yourself and keep the seeds, because sadly nowadays a lot of the seeds are genetically modified, and they will not produce seeds. They've done that on purpose, so that you have to keep coming back and going, you know, as farmers have done, you know, they've done to the farmers too, is that you have to keep buying the seeds from Monsanto, wherever it is. And they've done the same with cannabis. And so it's really, really important that any seeds you do get are heirloom seeds, and you try and get them feminized, and try and get them from someone who it's not genetically modified, so that you can, if you want to have a certain portion of your plants that you want to take to seed, then you can let them go to seed. You don't want them to go to seed if you want to take the buds as medicine, because effectively what it is, the buds are the flowers, and they become very, very sticky because they're secreting a hormone, because they need to breed, and they feel that they, you know, they're horny teenagers, basically. That they are horny teenage girls, and they are waiting for pollen to come from somewhere else, and then they turn to seed. But the moment they go to seed, they kind of, all of the cannabinoids go into to feeding the seed. So you kind of lose the medicinal benefit then of the plant once it's gone to seed. So it's really important to separate, because cannabis pollen can actually travel for 3 miles. And so that's one of the dangerous things about having an outdoor guerrilla grow, is that if somebody has, and they've gone male, and they, you know, 3 miles away, they could fertilize all your plants, and all of a sudden yours all go to seed as well. And it's like, that's the whole crop gone, you know. So this is why it's much better to do it inside in a tent, where you can really manipulate the environment and give them the best environment. Plus you can keep pollen away. So indoor grows are much easier if you want to really have them for medicine. But if you just want to have them for the material, because obviously you can make rope out of it, you can do all sorts out of it.
Well, I've done that. I mean, I've taught people how to make rope before, and you know, some of that ditch weed is what we would use. And it made some incredible fiber. I mean, this thing really is a magic plant, just the same way we talk about comfrey. And we're going to figure out how to overlay some of this stuff. But yeah, that would be a real problem here, because I guarantee a lot of these hillbilly where we live. I mean, there's some old 8th-generation hillbillies up here, and I mean, these hillbilly hooter bandits almost certainly got some crops growing in some hollers up here, so you would definitely have to have that stuff covered up. But look, right now I'm just going to keep reaching out to you for the time being, and I'm going to encourage everybody else out there. Like I said, I don't get any kickback for this, y'all. I just know, and I'm aware of her story, and it brought me right back to my nephew who died of brain cancer. It brought me right back to my friend Cody, who cured himself of the same exact brain cancer that the medical industry had zero answers for. So when I heard your story, I was like, good night. I wasn't even halfway home, and I'm texting Tag like, hey man, you got to hook me up with her. And then I'm like, okay, I'm not waiting, dude. I'm just going to email her. Figured you're very busy, but you got back with me. We touched bases, and here we are right now. Michelle, do you have anything else?
We're going to include all her contact information. We're just going to link it. So if you have any very specific questions, I would encourage you to shoot her an email with any of those.
Well, hey, y'all. Callie, is there anything else you'd like to leave the audience with? I've never done a 2-hour interview ever. And
Told you I could talk.
it's not just that. Your story is so compelling. And folks, we only hit the tip of it. She's got an ebook that Michelle's been working through. I haven't had a chance to really check it out yet, but Michelle has been working for ebook, and
it's very, I would encourage people to get that too, because I believe it shows you how to make tinctures too. So
yeah, it's the basics. I try and give everybody kind of, it's a case of, because obviously I do consultations for people, but sometimes I get very overwhelmed, and so a lot of the time I'm like, look, here's an ebook, have a read through that. If you still feel you need my help after that, then I'm here for you. It kind of gives people almost a precursor, and it gives them a lot of basic information so that they're not coming to me completely blind, and then I don't have to give them the basics. They've already got that. So, but yeah, my ebook is, I give that out for free to people, whoever wants it. And I did used to have it on a platform, but because it has the word cannabis in there, I got pulled down. They actually shut down my PayPal. They shut down my Stripe. I can't have it on a platform anymore because it just keeps getting shut down. So I have to give it to people manually, which is a bit of a pain, but it's okay. If anybody needs my help, I'm more than happy. If it's just CBD, as simple as what you were looking for, that's a really quick, easy fix. I can just take a few bits of information and we can get something going. If you do have cancer, or you have more of an intricate kind of thing going on, and you're on a lot of pharmaceuticals or anything like that, then I would require a consultation, just because I need to know some medical history to know exactly how to help you so that you can be safe. That's ultimately the most important thing, is that you're safe and that you're doing things properly, because it's not a one size fits all, and it's not everybody has that education. So yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm more than happy. This is just another opportunity for me to make my son's suffering mean something, and all of the other people that I've helped, their suffering. I've seen stage 4 pancreatic cancer go into remission. I've seen glioblastomas. I've seen all sorts of things that people sent home with literally weeks to live, and they're still alive. And it's in honor of all of those people, and that I want to make sure that more and more people know that just because the doctors tell you that there's no other way, doesn't mean it's right. They don't know. They don't have these things in their toolbox. They don't, and so they just don't know any better. There's hope. Where there's life, there's hope.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, folks. You now see why I was so excited to have her on here, tell her story. Look, everybody, send this everywhere you possibly can. I know there are a whole lot of people out there that aren't necessarily ready to hear this. They're going to get their knickers in a bunch.
Get the knickers in a twist is what we'd say.
In a twist. Okay. Well, I got that one totally wrong, but I got a lot of other stuff right.
You got the knicker bit right. That's all that matters, right?
Yep, there you are with that N word again. Hey, y'all, email her for any complaints, because it didn't come on this end, y'all. Hey, thank you so much, everybody in the chat. Until next time, y'all, stay alert, stay alive.
Opinion that sense on your sons do. They don't want an individual, just a carbon copy. You spitting that manicotti, yeah, I'm talking saucy. All they want to build is a prison world full of pet Tamagotchis. The kamikaze got me out of body like I'm Goku SS3. They want to push me to the center like a cell. They want to spin up at the center of the nexus, me. They want me to bow down, but I'm a warrior.